Welcome to my channel, History Fans, where we dig up the hidden stories that standard textbooks completely leave out. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the real Wild West, stripping away the glamorous Hollywood myths to reveal the dark, dangerous, and shocking secrets that people tried to bury forever. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep historical dive. Part 1. The Horrific Legend of the Bloody Benders. Out on the lonely Kansas prairie in the early 1870s, a family known as the Benders ran a small, cozy roadside inn and general store. Travelers stopping for a warm meal or a place to sleep thought they had found a safe haven in the vast, empty wilderness. However, every single customer who entered that quiet homestead carrying valuable cash or supplies vanished into thin air. The family consisted of John Bender, his wife Elvira, their son John Jr., and their charming daughter Kate, who claimed to be a spiritual psychic. They set up a clever trap in their small dining room, using a heavy canvas curtain to divide the living area from the public shop. When they seated unsuspecting guests against this canvas curtain, with their backs pressed firmly against the cloth, while Kate held the travelers' attention with lively conversation, old John Bender or his son would creep up behind the curtain with a heavy hammer. With one swift, crushing blow to the skull, they smashed the traveler's head, dropped them through a secret trapdoor beneath the floorboards, and slit their throat in the cellar. They robbed the dead bodies of everything they owned, from valuable gold coins to simple pocket watches and warm coats. When local neighbors grew suspicious after a dozen travelers disappeared, an official search party finally investigated the small cabin in 1873. What they uncovered horrified the entire nation. At least 11 mutilated corpses were buried in the garden patch behind the house. But the most terrifying part of this dark mystery is that the Bender family vanished right before the search party arrived. Despite a massive nationwide manhunt and a high bounty on their heads, the Bloody Benders were never officially captured or brought to justice. They simply faded into the shadows of the frontier, leaving behind one of the gruesome murder mysteries in early American history. Part 2. Human Cannibalism on the Trail. The journey westward was driven by bright promises of free land, shiny gold, and absolute personal freedom. However, for thousands of desperate pioneers, that dream quickly turned into a gruesome, frozen nightmare of survival. The most famous case occurred in the terrible winter of 1846, when the Donner Party attempted a shortcut to California. Trapped high in the Sierra Nevada mountains by sudden massive blizzards, their food supplies quickly ran completely out. First, they ate their horses, then their faithful hunting dogs, and finally cooked animal hides and old leather shoes to survive. When all non-human food sources were gone, the starving survivors turned to eating the frozen bodies of their dead friends and family members. But the Donner Party was not an isolated incident out on the lawless frontier. In 1874, a prospector named Alfred Packer led 5 men into the rugged Colorado mountains during a fierce winter storm. Months later, Packer walked out of the wilderness alone, looking surprisingly healthy, well-fed, and carrying pouches of extra money. An investigation later revealed that Packer had murdered his companions one by one, smoking and preserving their flesh for his winter meals. Remote trails lacked any government authority or emergency aid, leaving isolated travelers entirely on their own. Extreme hunger drove ordinary civilized settlers to commit horrific acts that haunted them for the rest of their lives. The untamed frontier forced decent people to strip away their basic humanity
just to stay alive another day.
Part 3. The Savage Reality of Frontier Scalping. Popular Western films often show scalping as a tactic used exclusively by Native American tribes against white settlers. However, historical records reveal a far more complex, brutal, and profit-driven reality that spanned decades. Colonial governments and frontier territories actively encouraged the horrific practice by placing official cash rewards on human scalps. Governments paid large bounties for the scalps of native men, women, and young children to force tribes off valuable land. Mercenary gangs formed across the Southwest, hunting down indigenous communities purely for cold, hard cash. The infamous Glanton Gang terrorized northern Mexico, killing innocent villagers and taking their scalps to collect government gold rewards. When they ran out of native targets, they began murdering innocent Mexican citizens and scalping them as hair looked identical to officials. Scalping involved cutting around the hairline with a sharp knife and ripping the skin away from the skull. Victims who survived the ordeal suffered intense physical agony, severe infections, and permanent physical disfiguration. The scalp trade transformed horrific physical violence into a lucrative, organized business across the entire open borderland.
Part 4. Wild Towns Run by Criminal Marshals. Old movies depict frontier lawmen as noble heroes wearing shiny tin stars, protecting innocent townsfolk from ruthless outlaws. In reality, the line between law enforcement and dangerous criminals was extremely thin and often completely non-existent. Town leaders usually hired notorious gunmen, thieves, and gamblers as marshals because they knew how to use lethal force. Famous icons like Wyatt Earp, Wild Bill Hickok, and Ben Thompson frequently operated on both sides of the law. These lawmen controlled local gambling houses, collected hefty protection payments from saloons, and ran illegal brothels on the side. If a rival business owner refused to pay protection money, the lawman simply arrested or shot them in the street. In 1881, the famous gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone was actually a bloody feud between rival business factions. The Earp brothers used their legal power as lawmen to eliminate business competitors who threatened their financial control over the town. Many lawmen used their badges as a legal shield to murder political enemies and steal valuable land without facing trial. Life in these wild boomtowns was not protected by justice. It was ruled by corrupt gunslingers using government authority.
Part 5. The Dark World of Frontier Exploitation. The rapid expansion of Western towns created a booming dark economy centered around forced female labor and exploitation. Thousands of vulnerable young women were tricked with promises of honorable jobs like waitressing, only to be trapped in brothels. Brothel owners kept these women in constant financial debt by charging absurd prices for basic food, clothing, and small rooms. Women faced constant physical abuse from violent customers and owners, with absolutely zero legal protection from local marshals or courts. Hopelessness, severe disease, and forced isolation led to extraordinarily high rates of suicide among these young women. Chinese immigrant women faced even harsher conditions, being smuggled across the ocean and sold into virtual slavery at mining camps. They were held in tiny, windowless wooden cages and forced to work under appalling, dangerous conditions until their bodies failed. Saloon owners and local politicians grew extremely wealthy off this human trade while maintaining respectable public images in society. The booming frontier economy was built directly on the suffering, exploitation, and destruction of countless forgotten women.
Part 6. The Secret Opium Epidemic. While saloon gunfights dominate Western folklore, a silent and deadly drug epidemic quietly destroyed thousands of frontier lives. Millions of Chinese laborers brought opium to the United States while building the Transcontinental Railroad under dangerous conditions. Soon, secretive opium dens opened beneath the streets of major Western cities like San Francisco, Tombstone, and Deadwood. These dark, smoke-filled underground dens attracted people from all levels of society, including wealthy businessmen, cowboys, and lawmen. Highly addictive opium allowed stressed frontier residents to temporarily escape the extreme pain, boredom, and trauma of daily wilderness life. At the same time, liquid opium known as laudanum was sold legally at every local general store without a doctor's prescription. Doctors routinely prescribed laudanum to frontier women for minor headaches, anxiety, and ordinary physical pain. Tens of thousands of housewives became severely addicted to these powerful narcotics, trapped in a silent cycle of chemical dependency. The Wild West was not just fueled by cheap whiskey, it was heavily doused in powerful, life-destroying addictive drugs.
Part 7. The Era of Corporate Land Wars. Hollywood portrays range wars as simple feuds between honest cattle ranchers and independent small farmers fighting over open land. In reality, these bloody conflicts were calculated corporate land grabs orchestrated by wealthy Eastern and foreign investors. Powerful cattle barons formed organized cartels claiming millions of acres of public land and water sources for their own private profits. When small homesteaders legally settled on public land, the corporate cartels hired mercenary armies of professional killers to drive them out. The infamous Johnson County War of 1892 in Wyoming saw wealthy ranchers hire 35 Texas gunmen to execute small farmers. They burned down homestead houses, shot farm livestock, and murdered innocent family leaders in black daylight to steal land titles. These wealthy corporate syndicates bought off local judges, state governors, and federal marshals to ensure their crimes were completely ignored. The myth of the free, open frontier was systematically crushed by ruthless corporate greed and political corruption. The true legacy of the Wild West was not honor and freedom, but the cold, bloody consolidation of wealth and power.